Welcome back. I'm Ed Highland. This is WCI TV, sponsored by Tower MSA Partners. I've got the pleasure of being joined now by two gentlemen from Paradigm, David Leicht, who's Chief Sales Officer, and David Lupinsky, with Vice President for Clinical Product Solutions. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming by. Maybe we just kind of kick it off by talking a little bit about Paradigm. We're going to get into Hero MSK, which is an important aspect of why you're here. But tell us a little bit about Paradigm. Give us that quick why this company is a big player in the workers' compensation industry.
Sure. Yeah. So Paradigm has been around for well over 30 years, industry leader in really managing catastrophic outcomes. And throughout our entire DNA, really is our focus on improving the lives of those we serve. And that's the injured worker. And in partnering with our carrier partners, our TPA partners, as well as our employers that we work with for those injuries that are most catastrophic in our industry, we are very fortunate to be the leaders in ensuring that they have the best recovery possible.
Well, David, let's turn to you and ask a question about Hero MSK. It's a value-based care solution to manage all types of musculoskeletal injuries. Tell us a little bit more about why there was a need for this type of solution. You already touched on it just a little bit, John. And what's at stake for these types of cases for payers and also for injured workers?
Yeah, I mean, we've been solving the catastrophic cases for 30 plus years. So I think it's time we start going after the creeping catastrophic, and that's what we see in musculoskeletal conditions, right? It's the lumbar strain that's not just a lumbar sprain. In terms of why we need value-based care, I honestly think that value-based care is needed in healthcare, not just musculoskeletal. And I'll give you a couple examples as to why. The first challenge with fee-for-service medicine is, in the title of it, the focus is on fees. And so we see that on the medical side, right, where the physicians that do the most make the most. So there's some misaligned incentives there. We honestly see that on the managed care side as well, right? When you're focused on fees, we kind of lose sight of outcomes. And part of what really differentiated us in the catastrophic case was that value-based capitated model and that focus on the patient. So that was one big change, was the change into that value-based model and where the focus is. The other piece is moving upstream, and in value-based care, you really focus on prevention, right? We're not reacting to the problem, we're trying to get in front of it. I heard a great quote that said, eventually we got to stop pulling bodies out of the river and we got to swim upstream and figure out why people keep falling in. And that's the goal in Hero MSK. We're engaging people early, we're looking at we know what very predictive factors, and we're mitigating the risk before it turns into something problematic.
Well, as an industry leader in value-based care, talk a little bit about achieving optimal clinical and financial outcomes for catastrophic injuries. Tell us more about how Paradigm is leveraging this model for Hero MSK.
Yeah, so there's three core components of the program, and I'll go through each one. One is really our prescriptive analytics, and so one of the challenges, we're all talking about AI and analytics, right? One of the big challenges of that, though, is what data do you get? And comp has a lot of poor data, and so, the reality is that as good as your analytics are, if you don't have good data, it's garbage in, garbage out. So we engage the patients digitally. We look at a lot of predictive domains, social determinants of health. That's something talked about on the commercial side, not so much in comp, psychosocial, a lot of different domains to really get prescriptive for what's needed for the patient. The next pillar is really our interventions, and this is where we borrowed a lot of tools from the CAT side, bringing them down to musculoskeletal, but really using a digital tool like a wearable, where we're pinging the patient daily, little bits of information. They're within normal limits, we just track it, but as soon as they're not, we're reacting. And so becoming very proactive on our approach, not reactive. And then the last piece is doing it at a capitated rate, so bringing that value-based care into it. And that's really changing the model of it, right? Because most of the time when you're selling a service, you're saying how good you are, but the reality is, I want you to take the risk, Ed. In this one, we're saying how good we are, but we're bearing the risk of it. So it's putting the onus back on us to achieve the outcomes.
Well, John, maybe we could talk a little bit about, for patients with musculoskeletal injuries, bringing in the right clinical expertise and provider early in the care continuum is critical, of course. Can you expand on Paradigm's MSK condition-specific clinical management and also quality orthopedic network that'll be integrated into Hero MSK?
Absolutely. So for decades, we've been the absolute leader in clinical outcomes. So not only from our expert panel of medical directors, but our clinicians in the field working with injured workers, all the way through, our leadership is filled with clinicians, right? So really it's at the core of what we do. But none of that means anything if we can't get access to the right providers. So through our MSK program, we're not only taking that core DNA from the catastrophic world, but also marrying that with our specialty networks, which gives us access to the best providers in the nation, orthopedic and spine care physicians that have contracted with Paradigm, and many of them only with Paradigm because of our approach to value-based care and that mutual sharing of responsibility for achieving the outcome that we are guaranteeing. And that's really what makes us different. So from ensuring that we have the best provider based on what's their revision rate, right? Are they seeing patients in optimal sites of care? What level of experience do they have with the condition specific to the injured worker, and how do they perform from an outcomes basis? We look at that through a proprietary system and order rank them so that we know when we have an injured worker in a specific location that we have the best provider in our network, and we have preferential scheduling to get them seen quickly so that this process moves in a very bespoke and concierge type way.
This may be a very simplistic question, but is this kind of just a beginning? Because it seems like the program would be accessible and could be available to use for other types of injuries as well. I mean, you're focusing in on one aspect, which is fantastic and apparently has not been addressed, but does it have a broader potential base?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, musculoskeletal is 80% of workers' comp, so it's a pretty big bite of the apple we want to take on.
Well, you want that whole 100%.
Exactly. Eventually we'll move on out, and I think finding that creeping catastrophic, it may not fall within the musculoskeletal, but again, musculoskeletal is not just a problem in workers' comp, this is a problem in commercial, so we feel like that's our focus right now, really managing those subset of patients that are struggling in that area, getting the right providers, and really providing those best outcomes.
And as the data comes in, the program gets better?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, our network gets better, right? We learn from the more experience we have, just like an insurance carrier, right? The more you understand of how to best serve this injured population.
Well, if you need a hero, Paradigm apparently is the place to go. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming by and sharing with us today.
Great. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
And this is our program for right now, WCI TV. We're brought to you by Tower MSA Partners. Thanks for joining us.